The last day of school always had a special energy. The halls buzzed with excitement, everyone looking forward to the long summer ahead. For me, though, the anticipation was mixed with a touch of nervousness. I was Mark, the school's infamous prankster, and today was the day I'd pull off my final and greatest prank. The idea was simple: turn the gym into a haunted house and give the underclassmen a scare they'd never forget. My friends and I had spent weeks planning every detail, from the eerie decorations to the perfectly timed sound effects. We even had a few of our classmates lined up to play ghosts and monsters. It was going to be epic. As the bell rang, signaling the end of the last class, I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. We had only a short window to set everything up before the school closed for the day. I met up with my friends in the gym, where we quickly got to work. The place looked amazing. Blackout curtains on the windows, fake cobwebs hanging from the ceiling, and creepy props scattered around. We had rigged up speakers to play spooky sounds, and the lighting was just dim enough to make everything look genuinely terrifying. "Hey Mark, are you sure this is going to work?" asked Jake, one of my closest friends and co-conspirators. "Trust me, Jake. It's going to be legendary," I replied with a grin. "We've got everything under control." Everything was going smoothly until I noticed something odd. One of the props, a mannequin dressed as a ghost, had been moved. I distinctly remembered placing it by the entrance, but now it was in the middle of the gym. I brushed it off, assuming one of my friends had moved it without telling me. As we finished setting up, I gave everyone their final instructions. Remember, stick to the plan. No improvising. We want to scare them, not give them heart attacks. Everyone nodded, and we took our positions. I was in charge of controlling the sound effects and lighting from a hidden corner. The first group of underclassmen entered the gym, and I hit play on the sound system. The room filled with eerie moans and creaks, and the kids' nervous giggles turned into shrieks as they navigated through the haunted maze we had created. Everything was going perfectly until I noticed something else out of place. One of the fake skeletons hanging from the ceiling had fallen down. I knew it had been securely fastened. A chill ran down my spine, but I shook it off. Maybe the vibrations from the speakers had knocked it loose. But then, things started getting really weird. The lights began to flicker erratically, and the sound effects cut in and out. This wasn't part of the plan. I glanced over at Jake, who was supposed to be in charge of the lights, but he looked as confused as I felt. "What's going on?" he mouthed to me, but I had no answer. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the gym, and the lights went out completely. The room was plunged into darkness, and the underclassmen started to panic. I fumbled for my flashlight, but before I could find it, I heard a scream. Not the playful kind, but a scream of genuine terror. I finally managed to get the flashlight on and shone it around the gym. The decorations and props were in disarray, and some of the kids were crying. I saw a figure moving in the shadows, but it didn't look like one of my friends. It was taller and moved with an eerie fluidity that sent shivers down my spine. "All right, everyone out," I shouted, trying to keep my voice steady. "The prank's over. Get out of here." The kids scrambled for the exit, and I followed them, desperately trying to figure out what had gone wrong. As we gathered outside the gym, I did a quick head count. Everyone was there, except for Jake. "Where's Jake?" I asked, my voice trembling. No one knew. Panic began to set in. This was supposed to be a harmless prank, but now my best friend was missing. I had no choice but to go back in and find him. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself and stepped back into the dark, haunted gym, hoping that whatever had gone wrong, I could fix it before it was too late. Entering the gym again felt different this time. The excitement and adrenaline were replaced with a deep sense of dread. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the chaos we had left behind. The decorations were in tatters, the props scattered and broken. I called out for Jake, but the only response was the echo of my own voice. I made my way to the control panel where we had set up the sound and light systems. Everything seemed to be in order, except for a few wires that looked like they had been deliberately cut. Someone had sabotaged our setup, but who and why? As I inspected the damage, I heard a faint noise coming from the far corner of the gym. I turned my flashlight in that direction and saw a figure huddled against the wall. Relief washed over me as I recognized Jake. "Jake, are you okay?" I rushed over to him, but as I got closer, I realized something was terribly wrong. Jake was pale, his eyes wide with fear. "Mark, we need to get out of here," he whispered, his voice trembling. "There's someone else in here." "What do you mean? Who?" "I don't know. I saw someone or something. It's not one of us. It's like the gym is really haunted." My rational mind wanted to dismiss his fear, but the look in his eyes told me he was serious. I helped him to his feet, and we started making our way to the exit. As we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Just as we reached the door, it slammed shut with a deafening bang. We both jumped and turned to see the figure I had glimpsed earlier. It was tall, cloaked in darkness, and moved with an unnatural grace. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "What do you want?" The figure didn't respond. Instead, it began to move towards us, its steps silent and menacing. Jake and I backed away, searching for another way out. But every door we tried was locked. Panic set in as we realized we were trapped. We made our way to the storage room, hoping to find something we could use to defend ourselves. Inside, we found an assortment of sports equipment, bats, balls, and a couple of old hockey sticks. I grabbed a bat, and Jake armed himself with a hockey stick. "Stay close," I whispered, my eyes scanning the room for any sign of the intruder. Minutes felt like hours as we waited in the darkness. Then, without warning, the lights flickered back on. The sudden brightness was blinding, and it took a moment for our eyes to adjust. When they did, the figure was gone. "Maybe it's over," Jake said, his voice hopeful but shaky. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Someone had sabotaged our prank, and now they were toying with us. We had to find a way out before things got any worse. We cautiously made our way back to the gym, keeping an eye out for any movement. The place was eerily silent, the only sound being our footsteps on the polished floor. As we approached the exit, I noticed something on the wall that hadn't been there before. Written in red paint, or what I hoped was paint, were the words, "You shouldn't have done this." My heart raced as I realized the message was meant for us. Someone was targeting me specifically because of the prank. But who could it be? I thought through all the people who might have had a grudge against me, but no one came to mind. We finally reached the exit, and to our relief, the door was unlocked. We burst outside, breathing in the cool night air. The other students were still there, huddled together in small groups, their faces etched with fear and confusion. "What happened in there?" one of them asked. "It was a prank gone wrong," I admitted, trying to keep my voice steady. "But someone sabotaged it. They locked us in and cut the power." As I spoke, I noticed a figure standing at the edge of the crowd. It was the same figure from the gym, watching us with an almost predatory gaze. I blinked, and they were gone. "Did you see that?" I asked Jake, but he shook his head. "See what?" "The person from the gym. They were here, watching us." Jake looked around, but there was no sign of the mysterious figure. "Mark, I think you're seeing things. Maybe we should just go home and forget about this. But I couldn't forget. Someone had turned my harmless prank into a nightmare, and I needed to find out who and why. As we left the school grounds, I resolved to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. The following days were a blur of restless nights and anxious thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever had sabotaged my prank was still out there, watching and waiting. I spent hours going over every detail of that night, trying to piece together who could have done it. I decided to confront my friends first. We met at a local diner, a neutral place where we could talk without drawing too much attention. I laid everything out for them, explaining my suspicions and fears. "Do any of you know who could have done this?" I asked, my eyes scanning their faces for any sign of guilt. They all shook their heads, looking as puzzled and concerned as I felt. "It doesn't make sense," said Sarah, one of the friends who had helped set up the prank. "We were all together the whole time. None of us could have done it." "What about the underclassmen?" suggested Mike. "Maybe one of them wanted to get back at you for all the pranks you've pulled over the years." It was a possibility, but it didn't quite fit. The level of sabotage and the sheer malice behind it seemed beyond what any underclassman would do. "Maybe," I said, though I wasn't convinced. As we left the diner, I noticed a familiar figure across the street. It was the same person from the gym, standing there, watching us. My blood ran cold and I turned to my friends. "Do you see that person over there?" They followed my gaze, but by the time they looked, the figure had disappeared again. "Mark, are you sure you're not imagining things?" Jake asked, concern in his voice. "I'm not," I insisted. "Someone's following us." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my mind, trying to make sense of it all. I finally decided to take a walk to clear my head. As I wandered through the quiet streets, I found myself drawn back to the school. It was eerie seeing it so empty, a stark contrast to the chaos of that last day. I made my way to the gym, the scene of the nightmare. The doors were locked, but I found an open window and climbed inside. The gym looked almost normal in the dim light, but the memories of that night haunted me. I needed to find something, anything that could give me a clue. As I searched, I heard a noise behind me. I spun around, flashlight in hand, and saw the figure standing there, just as menacing as before. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to steady my shaking hands. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice echoing through the empty gym. The figure stepped forward into the light, and I finally saw their face. It was Mr. Thompson, our history teacher. I was stunned. "Mr. Thompson, why are you doing this?" He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You think your pranks are funny, Mark? You think it's all just a game? You have no idea the damage you've caused." I was speechless. Mr. Thompson had always been a bit strict, but I never imagined he would do something like this. "I don't understand," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You don't need to understand," he replied, his tone cold. "You just need to learn your lesson. Actions have consequences, Mark. It's time you faced yours." Before I could react, he lunged at me. I dodged, barely avoiding his grasp, and ran for the exit. My mind raced as I tried to think of a way out. I remembered the storage room and sprinted towards it, hoping to find something to defend myself with. I burst into the storage room and grabbed a baseball bat. Just as Mr. Thompson entered, I swung with all my might. He dodged, but the bat grazed his arm, causing him to stumble. I took the opportunity to run again, this time heading for the window I had entered through. I climbed out and ran into the night, not stopping until I was sure I was safe. I called the police and told them everything. Mr. Thompson was arrested, and the truth came out. He had a history of mental health issues and had fixated on my pranks as a symbol of the disrespect and chaos he felt in his life. In the aftermath, I struggled with guilt and fear, but I also learned a valuable lesson. Pranks might seem harmless, but they can have real consequences. I resolved to use my creativity for better things, to bring joy and laughter rather than fear and pain. The last day of school would always be remembered, but not for the reasons I had planned. It was a reminder of the fine line between fun and danger, and the importance of thinking before acting. The final prank had changed everything, and I would never be the same. The last bell of the school year echoed through the empty hallways, a sound that usually brought a sense of relief and excitement. This time, it just felt eerie. Most students had already bolted out the doors, eager to start their summer vacations, but I was still here, stuck in Mr. Thompson's classroom, desperately trying to finish my final project. Just a few more minutes, I muttered to myself, tapping furiously on the keyboard. The ticking clock on the wall seemed to mock my attempts to hurry. I glanced around the room, now devoid of the usual chatter and chaos, feeling a strange chill settle over me. Finally, I saved my work and shut down the computer. With a sigh of relief, I packed my bag and headed to my locker. The hallways were deserted, and the fluorescent lights flickered, casting unsettling shadows. I quickened my pace, wanting to grab my stuff and get out of there as soon as possible. As I reached my locker, I heard the distant hum of the janitor's vacuum cleaner. Good, I thought. At least I wasn't completely alone. I emptied my locker, stuffing textbooks and notebooks into my bag, and then slammed the door shut. The echo of the metal door reverberated through the empty halls, sounding much louder than usual. I turned to leave, but then I noticed something strange. A piece of paper was taped to my locker door, something that hadn't been there earlier. I ripped it off and unfolded it, revealing a hastily scrawled message in red ink. You shouldn't be here. My heart skipped a beat. Was this someone's idea of a joke? I looked around, expecting to see a grinning face peeking from around the corner, but there was no one. Just the empty, silent hallway. I crumpled the note and tossed it into the nearest trash can, brushing it off as a prank. I made my way towards the main entrance, only to find it locked. Panic started to set in. I pulled out my phone to call for help, but there was no signal. Of course, it had to be a dead zone. I tried the side doors, the gym entrance, even the emergency exits, but they were all locked. As I walked back towards the center of the school, I heard a faint sound. At first, I thought it was just the hum of the air conditioning, but then it became clearer, the sound of footsteps. I froze, listening intently. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, echoing through the empty halls. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling slightly. "Is anyone there?" No response. The footsteps stopped. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Maybe it was just the janitor, I told myself. But deep down, I knew it didn't sound like him. I decided to head back to Mr. Thompson's classroom. Maybe there was a phone there I could use. As I turned the corner, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Written on the wall in the same red ink as the note were the words, "Get out while you still can." My hands shook as I read the message. This was no prank. Someone was trying to scare me, and they were succeeding. I needed to find a way out, fast. But as I took a step forward, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the hallway into darkness. Darkness enveloped me, and my heart pounded in my chest. I fumbled for my phone, switching on the flashlight app. The narrow beam cut through the pitch black, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance along the walls. I forced myself to take slow, deep breaths, trying to steady my nerves. "Okay, think," I whispered to myself. "There has to be another way out." I remembered the old maintenance tunnel in the basement that connected to the outside. It was rarely used and probably not locked. The thought of descending into the basement sent a shiver down my spine, but I didn't have much choice. I turned and made my way toward the nearest stairwell. Every step I took echoed loudly, each sound magnified by the oppressive silence. I kept my eyes peeled for any signs of movement, my grip on my phone tight. As I reached the basement door, I noticed another message scrawled on it. Too late to turn back. I pushed the door open and descended the stairs, the air growing colder with each step. The basement smelled musty, the scent of old textbooks and forgotten memories lingering in the air. I shone my flashlight around, searching for the tunnel entrance. My heart sank as I saw the familiar metal grate at the far end of the room. Just as I took a step forward, I heard it again. The sound of footsteps, this time closer. They were slow, deliberate, as if someone was following me, waiting for the right moment to strike. I turned quickly, aiming my flashlight at the stairs. The beam revealed nothing but emptiness, but the sense of being watched was overwhelming. I forced myself to move, quickening my pace. The tunnel entrance was within reach, and I had to make it before whoever or whatever was following me caught up. As I approached the grate, I saw that it was slightly ajar. Relief washed over me, and I pushed it open, crawling inside. The tunnel was narrow and damp, the walls closing in on me. My flashlight flickered, and I prayed the battery wouldn't die. I crawled forward, each movement sending a jolt of fear through me. The sound of the footsteps had stopped, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Halfway through the tunnel, I noticed something strange. There were scratch marks on the walls, as if someone had desperately tried to claw their way out. Panic surged through me, and I quickened my pace, the tunnel seeming to stretch on forever. Finally, I saw a faint light at the end of the tunnel. I scrambled towards it, my breathing ragged. As I reached the exit, I pushed the grate open and crawled out, collapsing onto the cold, hard ground. I was outside, but I couldn't afford to relax yet. I looked around trying to get my bearings. That's when I saw it. A figure standing in the shadows watching me. My heart leapt into my throat as the figure stepped forward, revealing itself. It was the janitor, his eyes wide with fear. "You shouldn't be here," he said in a trembling voice. "It's not safe." "What do you mean?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. He shook his head, glancing nervously around. "There's something in this school. Something evil. It doesn't like intruders." Before I could ask more, he turned and ran, disappearing into the darkness. I stood there, stunned, trying to process what he'd said. The sense of dread returned, stronger than ever. I needed to get out of here, but I had no idea where to go. Then, I noticed another message written in red ink on the ground in front of me. "You're not alone." A chill ran down my spine. I wasn't sure if it was a warning or a threat, but one thing was clear. I had to find a way to escape before it was too late. The janitor's words echoed in my mind as I stood frozen, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I couldn't afford to stay in one place for too long. Whoever or whatever was inside the school wouldn't stop until it found me. I needed to get far away, but where? I scanned my surroundings, looking for a clear path to safety. The schoolyard was eerily quiet, the night air heavy with tension. I began moving towards the street, my steps cautious and my eyes darting around, alert for any signs of movement. My phone's flashlight flickered and died, plunging me into near total darkness. I cursed under my breath and pocketed it, relying on the faint moonlight to guide me. As I neared the gate, I heard a soft whisper. At first I thought it was the wind, but then it came again, louder and more distinct. "Help me." I stopped in my tracks, straining to hear. The voice sounded desperate, pained. It was coming from the direction of the gymnasium. My instincts screamed at me to keep running, to escape, but something compelled me to turn back. I retraced my steps, heading toward the gym. The building loomed ahead, its dark windows like empty eyes staring into my soul. I reached the entrance and pushed the door open, wincing as it creaked loudly. Inside, the gym was dimly lit by emergency lights, casting long, eerie shadows. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. "Is anyone there?" Silence answered me. I took a few hesitant steps forward, my footsteps echoing off the walls. Then, I heard it again. "Help me." The voice was clearer now, definitely coming from the locker room. I approached the locker room door, my heart hammering in my chest. As I pushed it open, a wave of cold air hit me. The room was dark, the only light coming from a flickering bulb overhead. I scanned the rows of lockers, my eyes straining to see. That's when I saw her. A girl, about my age, was huddled in the corner, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. She looked up at me, her lips trembling. "Please, you have to help me," she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. I rushed over to her, kneeling beside her. "What happened? Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's here. The thing that's been haunting this school. It trapped me here. I've been hiding, but I can't get out." "Come on," I said, helping her to her feet. "We'll get out together." We moved quickly, heading back toward the main entrance. As we neared the doors, the temperature dropped suddenly, and the air grew thick with a sense of malevolence. The girl clung to my arm, her fear palpable. We reached the entrance, but the doors wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me. I kicked and pushed, but it was no use. We were trapped. Suddenly the lights flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. A low, guttural growl echoed through the hallways, sending chills down my spine. The girl whimpered, clinging to me tighter. "Stay close," I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "We'll find another way." We moved through the darkened hallways, the growling growing louder. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, surrounding us. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck and spun around, but there was nothing there. Then the girl screamed. I turned to see her being dragged backwards by an unseen force, her fingers clawing at the floor. I lunged forward, grabbing her hand and pulling with all my strength. The force was relentless, but I refused to let go. With a final, desperate yank, I managed to pull her free. We stumbled back, gasping for breath. The growling intensified, a malevolent presence closing in on us. "We need to get to the roof," she said suddenly. "There's a fire escape." We sprinted toward the stairwell, the growling echoing in our ears. We climbed the stairs 2 at a time, adrenaline propelling us upward. As we burst through the door to the roof, the cool night air hit us, a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere inside. We ran to the edge of the roof, finding the fire escape. I helped the girl climb down, following close behind. As we reached the ground, we didn't stop running until we were far away from the school, the growling finally fading into the distance. We collapsed on the sidewalk, panting and shaking. The girl looked at me, gratitude and fear in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved my life." I nodded, still trying to catch my breath. "What was that thing?" "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling. "But it doesn't want us here. It never did." We sat there in silence, the reality of what had happened sinking in. The school loomed in the distance, a dark silhouette against the night sky. I knew I would never forget this night, and I doubted I would ever set foot in that building again. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, we stood up and started walking, leaving the horrors of that last day of school behind us. But the memories would haunt me forever, a reminder that some places are better left in the past. On the last day of high school, the air was filled with a mix of excitement and nostalgia. My friends and I were eager to bid farewell to our familiar halls and classrooms. But there was one place we hadn't explored: the old abandoned wing of the school. It had been closed off for years, shrouded in mystery and rumors. We figured it was the perfect place for one last adventure before graduation. "Come on, it'll be fun," Alex urged, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "Who knows what we'll find in there?" I hesitated but finally agreed. The group consisted of Alex, Sarah, Ben, and me. We made our way to the rusty padlocked door that separated the old wing from the rest of the school. Alex, ever the troublemaker, had swiped a key from the janitor's office earlier in the year. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, dusty corridor. The air was thick with neglect, and our footsteps echoed eerily as we ventured inside. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and the faint smell of mildew filled the air. It was both thrilling and unsettling. "Look at this place," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's like a time capsule." We wandered through the abandoned classrooms, finding old textbooks, broken desks, and faded posters. The atmosphere was oppressive, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. As we turned a corner, Ben pointed to a door at the end of the hall. "What's that?" he asked. Curiosity got the better of us, and we approached the door. It was slightly ajar, and a dim light flickered inside. We pushed it open and stepped into a small room. The walls were covered in disturbing photographs and documents. There were pictures of students and teachers, all with their faces scratched out. Newspaper clippings detailed incidents of missing students and unexplained accidents. "What the hell is this?" I muttered, my heart pounding. As we sifted through the documents, a chill ran down my spine. There were detailed notes about a former teacher, Mr. Wren, who had been dismissed under mysterious circumstances. The more we read, the more unsettling it became. It seemed like Mr. Wren had been involved in something sinister, something the school had tried to cover up. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said, her voice trembling. We turned to leave, but Alex was nowhere to be found. "Alex!" Ben called out, but there was no response. Panic set in as we searched the room and the surrounding hallways, but Alex had vanished. The sense of unease grew stronger, and I could feel my heart racing. "Where could he have gone?" I asked, my voice shaky. We regrouped and decided to split up to cover more ground. As I wandered through the dark corridors, every shadow seemed to move, and every creak of the floorboards made me jump. The silence was suffocating, and the fear of the unknown gripped me tightly. "Alex, this isn't funny!" I shouted, hoping to hear his voice, but there was only silence. As the minutes ticked by, the realization hit me. Something was very wrong. This wasn't just a harmless prank or an innocent adventure. There was something lurking in the shadows of the abandoned wing, something that didn't want us to leave, and it had taken Alex. Fear tightened its grip on my chest as we regrouped near the entrance to the old wing. Sarah and Ben's faces mirrored my own panic. Alex was missing, and every passing second felt like a countdown to something terrible. "We have to find him," Ben insisted, his voice a strained whisper. "We can't leave him here." Sarah nodded, though her eyes were wide with fear. "But where do we start? This place is a maze." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Let's split up again. But this time, we keep our phones on and stay in contact. If anyone finds anything, we call the others immediately." With a reluctant nod, we each chose a different corridor. My path led me deeper into the abandoned wing, where the air grew colder and the darkness seemed to press in on me from all sides. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Alex," I called out, my voice echoing down the empty hall. Only silence answered. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant sound made my heart race. I turned a corner and found myself facing another door, slightly ajar. The faintest whisper of a breeze pushed it open, revealing a small office. Inside, the smell of mildew was overpowering. Papers were strewn across the desk, and the walls were lined with dusty bookshelves. I carefully stepped inside, my eyes scanning for any sign of Alex. On the desk, I noticed a journal. The cover was worn, and the pages yellowed with age. Curiosity got the better of me, and I flipped it open. The entries were written in a neat, precise hand. They belonged to Mr. Wren, the teacher whose name had appeared in the disturbing documents. The entries started innocuously enough, lesson plans, student assessments, but soon took a darker turn. "They don't understand," one entry read. "The students are mine to mold. Their fear is my power." A chill ran down my spine as I continued reading. Mr. Wren had been conducting twisted psychological experiments on his students, feeding off their fear. The school had covered it up, but the old wing had become his domain, a place where his dark legacy lingered. Suddenly my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. I answered, my voice barely above a whisper. "Did you find anything?" "Meet us in the main corridor," she said, her voice trembling. "We found something strange." I hurried back, my heart pounding. When I arrived, Sarah and Ben were standing by a large metal door. It was heavily rusted and looked out of place among the dilapidated surroundings. "We heard something coming from inside," Ben explained, his face pale. "It sounded like Alex." Without hesitation, we pushed the door open. It groaned in protest, revealing a dark, narrow staircase leading down. The air was damp and smelled of decay. "Alex?" I called down the stairs, my voice echoing. There was a faint, muffled response. We descended cautiously, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. At the bottom, we found a small, dimly lit room. Alex was there, tied to a chair, his eyes wide with terror. He was gagged, but otherwise unharmed. "We need to get out of here," Ben said urgently as he untied Alex. "Now!" As we turned to leave, a shadow moved in the corner of the room. A figure stepped forward, and my blood ran cold. It was Mr. Wren, or what was left of him. His eyes were hollow, his face gaunt and twisted with madness. "You shouldn't have come here," he rasped, his voice a chilling whisper. "This is my domain." We bolted up the stairs, our fear driving us forward. Mr. Wren's maniacal laughter echoed behind us, growing louder with each step. We burst through the metal door and slammed it shut, our breaths coming in ragged gasps. "Run!" I shouted, and we sprinted down the corridor, the sense of impending doom propelling us forward. Our footsteps pounded against the floor as we ran through the labyrinthine corridors of the abandoned wing. Alex, still shaken, stumbled but kept pace. The echo of Mr. Wren's laughter chased us, a haunting reminder of the terror lurking behind us. "We need to find a way out," Sarah gasped, her eyes darting around frantically. "There's an emergency exit near the science labs," Ben suggested. "We can get out through there." We turned a corner, racing towards the exit. The air felt colder, heavier, as if the very walls were closing in on us. I could hear Alex's ragged breathing behind me, his fear palpable. As we reached the science labs, our flashlights flickered. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, the emergency exit a distant hope. Just when we thought we were safe, the lights went out completely, plunging us into darkness. "Stay together," I whispered, my voice trembling. "We can't let him separate us." A faint ghostly glow appeared at the end of the hall. It was Mr. Wren, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. He moved towards us with an unnerving calm, his presence suffocating. "You can't escape," he hissed, his voice echoing in the darkness. "Your fear feeds me." Panic set in. We needed to find another way out. Desperation took over as I scanned the room. My eyes landed on a small, high window near the ceiling of one of the labs. It was our only chance. "Up there," I pointed. "We can climb out." We hurried into the lab, scrambling over the desks and equipment. Ben and I hoisted Sarah up first, followed by Alex. I was the last to climb, my heart pounding as Mr. Wren's presence loomed closer. His cold fingers brushed my ankle, sending a jolt of terror through me. With a final push, I tumbled through the window, landing in a heap on the grass outside. We didn't stop to catch our breath. We ran across the field, not daring to look back. The school building, once a place of learning and friendship, now felt like a monstrous entity, watching us with malevolent intent. We reached the main road, the safety of streetlights and passing cars a stark contrast to the darkness we'd just escaped. Only then did we allow ourselves to collapse, gasping for air. "What the hell was that?" Alex panted, his eyes wide with fear. "Mr. Wren," I replied, my voice shaking. "He's still there, haunting that place. The school covered up his experiments, but his spirit never left." Sarah shuddered. "We have to tell someone. The police, the school board. Someone needs to know what's going on in there." Ben nodded. "But who would believe us? We need proof." My mind raced, thinking of the journal and the photographs we'd found. The documents in that hidden room. They have to be enough to convince someone. The sun was beginning to rise, casting a warm light over the now seemingly peaceful school. It was hard to believe that such horror lurked within its walls. We made a pact to return with authorities, to reveal the dark secrets hidden in the abandoned wing, and to finally put Mr. Wren's tormented spirit to rest. As we walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. The last day of school had turned into a nightmare, and though we'd escaped, the shadow of Mr. Wren would haunt us forever. The abandoned wing was a place where fear thrived, and it had claimed its victims. But we were determined to make sure no one else would suffer the same fate. For now, we were safe. But the memory of Mr. Wren's chilling laughter would linger in our minds, a grim reminder of the horrors that lay hidden in the past. Thank you for joining me tonight on The Haunting Hour. If these stories sent shivers down your spine, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps me bring more chilling tales straight to your screen. If you're not yet part of our ghostly gathering, click subscribe and ring the bell to not miss out on any of our haunted adventures. And I'm curious, which story tonight creeped you out the most? Drop a comment below to let us know. Your favorite stories fuel our dark fires and inspire more spooky tales. Also, what kind of scary stories do you want to hear next? Tell me in the comments. Your wish might just become our next nightmare. Until next time, keep the lights on and keep the spirits at bay. Good night, and remember, never venture alone into the dark.